Hi, this is Curt and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup.
No. Okay, let's now, as you were talking about before, let's go to Florida, which I'd like to go to Florida. Let's go to Florida, and we're going to talk about a fire chief. Now, a fire chief is making a claim. He resigned, so he's no longer the chief, but and it's normally after people resign or get fired when these claims come up. And that's, I'll just say, if you're going to violate the law, I'm not saying they did or didn't. If you're going to violate the law, think of your relationship with your employees as a marriage. Everyone thinks the marriage is going to be great, but 50% of them end up in divorce. And when they do, all your secrets are coming out. So I'm not saying that's what happened here, but the facts are pretty simple. You have a fire chief who claims his primary duty was to respond to calls. And although it's not highlighted, he's now saying, and I wasn't paid overtime because I was in, I presume, the executive exemption to the FLSA. And that executive exception, just to kind of give a little bit to everybody, states that to qualify, your primary duty, right? And that's a big word here. Your primary duty has to be the management of the enterprise in which you're employed or customarily recognized department. Okay, so you have to, your primary duty has to be the management of the enterprise, and you must regularly direct the work of two or more other full-time employees. And then there's a whole bunch of other possible things, but the focus is on primarily. He claims, and this is not going to be a tough suit to win or lose. He claims that he was primarily a paramedic. So if he is primarily a paramedic, 50, 60, 70% of his time spent on the ambulance, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I think it's a tough case. And, you know, we in our FLSA classes, we get into this in a little bit more detail than we can get into here. But essentially, think about the executive exemption as something that you qualify for, that you're an exempt executive. The fact that once you become an exempt executive, you don't lose that because you engage in some non-exempt activities. All right. And the metaphor, again, I guess I find more and more I tend to use metaphors to kind of explain this. But I think a really good metaphor is the manager of a restaurant. The manager of a restaurant hires staff, schedules staff, orders supplies, deals with problems, really is responsible for the budget. They really manage the restaurant. Okay. The fact that they bust tables when it gets busy, the fact that maybe they have to bring out an order or do things that hourly employees do, doesn't change their primary duty of managing. And that's important, okay? Because the fact if you are indeed the fire chief and you are indeed managing the department, the fact that you go on medical runs, you go on fire runs, doesn't change the essence of your job. However, and this is, we use another metaphor here of a fast food restaurant. Wouldn't want to say McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, but think that type of thing. You can't take a kid who is 19 years old and call him the French fry manager.
Right.
And in an effort to escape having to pay him overtime when you make him work more than 40 hours in a week. You can't just give somebody a title. So when I see a case like this, the question becomes, is he indeed the fire chief? Does he have the authority to hire and fire people in this department? Or is there a fire commissioner or a board that does that? Does the chief come out with policies? Does the chief manage the budget? Or are there other people who do all that? Is he truly a manager, or is he just is that just a title?
Right. But the question everybody's going to want to know is, look, let's assume we're a small department.
Yeah.
Let's assume we've got 10 career firefighters or so, and we need a chief, but we also need the chief to be boots on the ground, right? Not just going to calls as the chief, doing a regular job as paramedic. That I think is a big difference here. But the question I think everybody would like to know the answer to, if you do, and I'm sure you do, is, look, what happens if I'm still the fire chief? I still do all the management, hiring, firing, enforcing, creating, drafting of policies, all that. But in routine, we're a busy EMS department, and I'm regularly going to, and we could change the facts. Primary EMS calls. No, I'm only the second or third EMS call out, right? But if I'm primary EMS and 70% of my time is spent on boots on the ground, yet I'm still doing the chief's job, what's the answer? What's the primary role of that person?
And that's going to come down to a jury question. The jury's going to have to, you're going to have to look at, the scales of justice, and the plaintiff's attorney is going to put on, one side of the scale, all of the things that he does that makes him look like he's hourly. The city is going to put on the scale, and we'll see what happens. Again, another metaphor, the close play at second base. Okay. Right. And we're going to have an umpire there. They're going to, weigh how much he looks like an hourly employee, how much it looks like he's an exempt executive, and then figure it out. Okay.
And facts matter, change. Like the one fact I intentionally pulled out, which is not in this case, but I've had it in others, is do you go on the first ambulance? Do you go on the third? Right. Because that wouldn't be, it would be unusual, let's say, to always have 2 or 3 ambulances out in your area, right? You're a backup, you're intentionally backup, as opposed to you're hired as the first out on that shift and you're filling a shift there, closer question. But that I think is one of the most interesting things we see today, because I think that's becoming very common. I will tell you that in New York State, and for my conference, we held this lecture too, is, I have 3 or 4 departments going from all volunteer to all volunteer with a paid chief. And the question, but the paid chief is during the day and is going to have to put on turnout gear, right, to be an interior,
like the manager of the restaurant,
on the front lawn.
But it's like the manager of the restaurant. The fact that you have to bus tables, if you are indeed an exempt executive, the fact that you engage in, but again, if you're really a figurehead, like your title, like you're not really the manager, you're not really the French fry manager. You're like a fake manager. We're giving you that title, but that's not really your primary duty.
Yeah. And this is expensive to lose, right? I mean, triple back 6 years, possibly. Yeah. You don't want to lose these things. So